I'm just going to update you on a piece of work we've been working on over the last year to actually create a measure for resilience, and we've involved several cities. Obviously, I've got three pictures up here. We've got London on the one side, which everyone will recognise. Perhaps less obvious is on the far side, we've got Sao Paulo, and in the middle, seeing as we're in Watford, I thought I'd stick Watford, just to give it a bit of context. So just a quick bit about Bureau Happold. We're quite a large, multidisciplinary engineering firm. We have a wide range of skills within our organisation, and we have quite an advanced water team. But what we've been doing for the last year, we actually won, myself and my colleague won the International Research Award between the BOE and the Worshipful Company of Constructors, and that award was to research methods of assessing resilience within cities, and so that's what I'm going to be going over today. So first of all, we've got to start with what is resilience. Okay, I think this is 29 now, isn't it? Yeah. Shocks and stresses we've obviously got in there, adapt and anticipate. But there's also that bit about opportunities, because everything's not bad. You know, the future has huge opportunities for us, but it's about being able to capitalise on those as we identify them. But also we want to be able to identify and reduce our vulnerabilities over time. So the future. Okay, so we've got some really big stress factors looming on the horizon. We're quite international in our views. So the end product of our research is quite international. So we've got to look internationally. And obviously, this is a key stress factor for the entire world. The next 2 billion people coming onto the planet are all going to essentially be going into cities. So this puts huge pressure on our city's infrastructure. Then obviously we're all big fans of, not big fans, but we're all well aware of climate change. But this is quite a recent article which shows that actually all of the international efforts for climate change are pointing us to actually missing our 2 degrees C target, which is obviously incredibly bad news. And then this is also by the MIT actually, published this, I think this was last week, saying that the Middle East, the average temperature in the Middle East is what they currently consider to be a maximum or heat wave will actually be the norm. So 50 degrees centigrade will be the norm, and so heat waves in the future will be obviously significantly upwards of that. And that's just, you can't sustain that. There's just incredible pressures on the Middle East as a result. And we talked earlier on, Ian referred to the interconnectedness of everything. So if something happens anywhere on the world, it spreads. We are all impacted by that. So, why resilience? Hopefully you're all familiar with this. This is from Munich Re. This just essentially shows that we have been having regular significant impacts above, north of £100 billion of impact annually, and the trend is upwards. So this is a real issue that we need to start tackling. So within Bureau Happold, we have formed a cities team, a cities resilience offer. We have quite a long track record in resilience, but we have tried to focus that into a key piece of research which we are going to talk about now. Some of our history, we've worked in Detroit on the Future City project. So you might be familiar with Detroit, a city which had a population of 3 million. That shrunk down to 700,000, leaving a huge amount of infrastructure, and essentially the city couldn't support that and went bankrupt. And so we worked with them on resilience strategies, working with a wide range of partners, working with a trust within the city to actually come up with a strategy for the future. Hurricane Sandy's already been mentioned a few times today. We actually did a piece of work within New York to look at the impacts of Hurricane Sandy, look at the success stories where the communities really did come together and where there were lessons that can be transferred to new situations. And that resulted in a piece of work which combined new small tech companies and SME businesses within the city to actually look at how technology can be involved into cities, and essentially that's resulted in a piece of enterprise investment by the city. And then we're also currently working on this project, which is the future of Riyadh. Obviously, I've referred to the major heat stress issues facing this part of the world, but actually this part of the world also not so commonly known, has a major flooding issue. So one of the things they're doing with this city is creating a very sort of innovative drainage scheme, but also forming that into a corridor which helps connect different parts of the city so that actually the city becomes a more cohesive community feel to it rather than somewhere where everyone just drives around the whole time. So coming back to the piece of research we're doing with the BRE, what we've done is we've created a method of assessing a city by breaking it down into 12 key components and then using a series of questioning and identifying shocks and stresses, understanding what the resilience demand is on that city by component, but also what their capacity to respond to that demand is. So the first step in that is identifying all of the shocks and stresses that city can be suffer. And so the way we do that is we obviously looked at exposure, impact and probability, so it's essentially a risk assessment. But it's a multi-factor risk assessment. So obviously this room is very interested in the far side, the natural hazards, particularly flooding. But we're trying to be as holistic as possible, looking at the total demands on that city from all of those various external factors which can impact on the city. So obviously societal hazards are things like those accidents or a terrorist attack, etc., etc. Looking at the health hazards, so you've got pandemics, epidemics, but also obesity, air quality are all key health issues for the future, diabetes. Then we look at things like security and so cyber attack, etc., etc., technological hazards, and then if we think about infrastructure, just our ability to keep the lifeblood of our cities going with the water systems, the utilities, power, etc., etc. And then once we understand that demand, we can then assess the capacity to respond to that demand, and we split that down into mitigation and adaptive capacity. And so in terms of mitigation, it's those designed-in measures, and if any Climate Change Act purists in the room, sorry, this is a different definition of mitigation to CO2 reduction. Sorry, Daniel. So this mitigation is, those measures you can design into a system to protect it, to make it more robust, give it some redundancy, so if you do have a failure, the system can still operate, and if you do have a complete failure, there's a fail-safe to minimise that damage. And then after that, what's the adaptive capacity? What's the ability to respond? And governance and command and control is central to all of that. So what we did is we took that model, that understanding, and we applied it to 12 cities around the world, including Bristol. Right, sir. And we first of all assessed the resilience demand, and so this is how the resilience demands are played out across those cities, and you can see at the lower end, you've got the likes of Manchester, Bristol, Glasgow, and that's because actually the UK is a fairly benign, well-developed, mature society, and we have actually designed away a lot of those factors. However, you've got the likes of Mumbai and Dhaka who have rapidly growing populations. They don't have the infrastructure to cope. And then climate, they're also all on deltas, and so you just see that climate change and those types of stress factors are going to really put those areas under pressure. And then when you cross-relate that with the capacity to respond, so this is the capacity to respond, the gold around the edge is the total capacity, then the blue is the mitigating factors, the green is the mitigating factors, and the blue is the adaptive capacity. And so you have the likes of Riyadh down the bottom corner, who's obviously resource rich, they have a large amount of money they can spend on resilience, and so they have invested heavily on protecting themselves. However, their systems aren't quite as mature, and they're still on that journey to becoming a fully resilient city. Whereas you get the likes of London, which has some infrastructure issues, it has a lot of designed-in mitigation, but actually it has its adaptive capacity measures are actually much more refined. It has an effective local resilience forum, and all of that multi-agency community regularly drill, regularly exercise together, and that is obviously all backed by legislation as well. So they actually have high adaptive capacity relatively. And what that gives us is a nice sort of ranking where we have Manchester very slightly at the top, going down to Dhaka and Mumbai, who have serious issues at the bottom. And then another part of the tool is taking all that understanding of all those stress factors and forming that into a projection of the future. So each stress factor, we know that obviously climate change will increase flood risk. It will also increase heat waves. It will also increase chances of drought. So we can project that understanding onto that resilience demand across all of those factors. And we can then say, well, if you look at Dakar, obviously it has quite a big resilience gap at the moment, but that resilience gap is accelerating away, and this is why they really need to start investing in that infrastructure. But that investment needs a business case. So what we need to understand is, what's the annualised cost of these impacts? So by doing that quick calculation of dividing the annualised probability of impact by the cost of impact, you can, in very rough order of magnitude terms, come up with a quick business case of the order of magnitude of funding that should be at least to meet the demand growth and the demand on the system. So what we did is we did the quick assessment of 12 cities, but we also sat down with 3 cities and did stakeholder engagement. And Sarah was very kindly supported us on the very first one of those. And so what we did within each case is we sat down and we got feedback, some good, some not so good, and we tried to learn from each step. And so when we went to London, we were one step further on, and by the time we went to Sao Paulo, we'd evolved our product to quite a reasonable level. To the point where we're about to launch an online tool which allows a city to log on, register, and this is not a panacea, this is not the solution to everyone's issues, but what it allows a city to do is assess its own resilience by assessing its demand, assessing its capacity, and then coming up with metrics. And what you can then do is think about scenarios about, say, if I invested here, invested there, how would that change that assessment? And ultimately create a new change our overall resilience rating. So it's about building that business case, because if we're going to build resilience, we need to build a business case for resilience. Thank you very much. I'm Richard Look. If you have any questions or if you want to talk afterwards, then I'm very happy to talk, obviously. But also, if you'd like to have a link sent to you, then obviously just give me your details and I'll get a link to the website when it's ready. Thank you very much.